I don't think there's any reason to be one of those sailors who allows their rig to be a mystery to them. Being able to inspect the health of your rig and have an idea if it's safe to go sailing or if you need to call in an expert to really do an in-depth checkup on your rig is an important thing to know. And that's what we're going to look at today. We're going to follow Will and Steven out into the field and have them show us the way they do a real rig inspection from a professional standpoint so we can be better equipped to know the health of our rig for our adventures out on the water. Welcome to Marine Mission Control. I'm Sailor Smurf. We had an awesome week this week in the yard at the Yacht Rigger. Really cool stuff to show you guys. Let's not delay and get into it. Okay, so this Beneteau, it's like a 50 foot or so. This is the one that was having the the kilovolt batteries put on it. So I go sneak onto another boat here and probably should stop doing this because that's got to be aggravating that you're in the heat, you're working hard, and then just someone sticks this fat cinema camera in your face out of nowhere. But man, I just like seeing what's going down and the unprepared nature of it, you know? It's fun for me, maybe not for them. We'll see how many complaints I get. Because they should be near completion. Yo!
Hey, how's it going?
Good, dude. Camera in your face. Wow, this looks exactly the same as last time.
Yeah, very similar. We made a few adjustments. We are adding Class T fusing instead of MRBFs on each battery. It does look very similar. And cleaning up some wiring over here in this compartment. Also, I found a loose ground. Here on the Beneteaus, they switch, French boats it seems in general, they switch the negative. And one of the negatives was loose and causing us to get discrepancy in readings. We had 13 volts versus 13.5. So we had to figure out what the deal was with that. And it was a loose lug. So we got that tightened up, and who knows how long that was loose. And we had to disconnect the alternator from the lithium bank, as well as add a B2B, which is a battery-to-battery charging module that's safe for lithium and programmable, so we can charge when the engine's running from the start battery to the lithium bank. So, man, that was a mouthful, but I think we got through it.
Yeah, that's awesome. Wow. So the electrical team, this is the footage of the boat being buttoned up and ready to be handed over to the owner. They had the panels off down there on the floor so you could still see the batteries. And then I start playing with the BTS, the battery monitor here. And that battery monitor by Victron is so freaking cool. Like, what an awesome gadget. If that's something you guys want to know more about, comment below because it's really slick. They even have a bigger version of that, but it shows state of charge, where the flow is going, where it's coming from, all kinds of cool stuff that's on there. And I hope you guys do comment because I really want a reason to do an in-depth review on that panel and a how-to, right? We'll review it, do a how-to. I just think it's cool, but, you know, I kind of tend to like gadgets, so I guess that's par for the course. So this is really sweet. There's a Halbert Grassi that has just pulled into the yard, and they have an emergency rig repair that needs to be done because they have a starboard lower on their standing rigging that's blown. Well, it's about to be blown. It's super cracked. So they're coming in, and I was talking to these guys after they had made it in, and they're all from Germany. It's a really cool group. It's a sailing club that actually goes sailing. So these guys, the way this works essentially is that it's like 30 people, part of a sailing club based out of Germany, and all 30 people throw in on this boat as part of their dues, their member dues, and the boat just keeps on doing circles around the world, circumnavigate, circumnavigate, circumnavigate. And as it keeps on doing that, the deal for them is that they get to fly in for 2 weeks and be on the boat on a revolving schedule. They get their 2 weeks, they fly back off. The only time they stay longer is when they're doing like a large passage, you know, doing a Pacific crossing, Atlantic crossing. And so it's a sailing club that actually sails. That's pretty cool. And these guys have just been all over. They had some really cool stories for what little English they were able to put together for me to accommodate my American-only English, of course. I then found out later two really wild things. One, that Halbert Grassi has just passed 1 million miles under the keel. That's crazy. I didn't even know boats could do 1 million miles without falling apart. That completely blows my mind. Further, also cool, is that one of the guys, in fact, this is the group of sailors right here, and I'm just walking around. I asked the captain, What story has happened? What's kind of a standout story, something that's your favorite?
Your favorite adventure that you've had on the boat?
The favorite adventure.
Uh-huh.
Oh, a heavy storm.
Heavy storm. What force was it blowing?
Tsunami.
And tsunami. Oh, you're real skipper. He's a real skipper. That's sweet.
We were right on the tsunami.
Then he says he's in a tsunami. Nice, nice. The other guy that you see here, that guy was a Porsche engineer for 17 years in Stuttgart, Germany. And he had a Carrera that they gave him every few years. They gave him a new Carrera as a company car. That guy had to be pretty up the chain to be given flip the keys to a Carrera every few years. And I love Porsches, so that was cool. I've never met anybody who even works at Porsche, much less an engineer that high up. So they're looking at the swage, at what's broke here on the, it was like the port lower, I think, and on the standing rigging. And so it had a hot dog split. Whenever you look at that swage stud, it always splits from top to bottom. It never goes horizontally. And that's just like engineers call it the hot dog effect. This is something Stephen Lloyd was telling me about, is that it's like when you put hot dogs on a grill, if you notice the hot dogs always split once they reach that point of expansion, they split vertically. You don't get the hot dog splitting horizontally across the midsection, right? So same thing here, when you're looking at your swaged components, always look for those vertical breaks, because that's where you're going to see the cracking and splitting and things of that nature occurring. And that's what happened here, as well as a little one of the wires on the, I think it's a 1x19, is coming off as well. And so yeah, that got corrected. Yacht rigger got them fixed up, and those guys pushed off. So back to this hardtop, quick update on it. They're getting some rails put on and prepping it to get the solar thrown on the top of this huge hardtop that's going on that Beneteau Swift Trawler. And so let's go over to Steven and get an update on what's going on with that big old piece of fiberglass.
Alrighty, quick update on the solar project for this Swift Trawler over here. Hardtop is getting the rail system lined up. Frank is working on making sure everything's perpendicular, but we're going to get these rails mounted and then get the panels mocked up and mounted on here before we pick it up. And then we have all the, maybe not all, but most of the instrumentation brought down here now. So the radar and the searchlight and nav lights, the KVH. And we're also actually making space for a Starlink that's going to be on here, and a wind instrument. So we're going to get all that lined up, mocked up, prep for wiring, mounted on here, and then we will pick this thing up with a crane and get it put on top of the boat.
I then decide to wander onto the boat and walk around. I mean, it's kind of like when I come to the yard here and I'm getting to film all these guys. It's like going to a boat show, except these boats are all getting customized. So it's pretty fun. So I just hop around. I take tours of boats. I kind of help myself to what's happening here behind the scenes. And I came across Scotty Yachty, such an awesome dude. I'm going to have introductions for the people that work here at the Yacht Rigger. It's just going to kind of organically happen over the episodes. But in next episode, episode 6, I give a little bit more of an in-depth introduction to people. But Scotty Yachty here is, yeah, man, he's electrical on the electrical team, and he's just working through the boat, trying to find where some of the wires are. Everything's tucked away and hidden on these boats, and these guys are like wire detectives, man. They will track down where they need to get to, whatever it is they need to get to do whatever it is they need to do. Obviously, I'm a little vague on the details here, but any electrical questions, ask me, and I will then ask the electrical team and have them get to you, because clearly I don't know what's going on with all this stuff. I just think it's cool. Okay. So I was excited to show you guys this, because this is one of those happenings, one of those events that occurs where you see it happen and you see the damage it caused, and you're like, oh, mental note here, I do not want this to happen one day on my boat. So this boat got hauled out. It's a Beneteau 50, a big girl, gets hauled out, and they find the cell drive, right, the little part that comes down off the engine that spins the prop. And those things are expensive. They're like $4 or $5 grand. They find that the cell drive was being corroded and eaten alive, so no sacrificial zincs were on the boat. The diver who was diving on it just missed it. He just didn't know what he was doing, apparently, and about caused $5,000 worth of damage. So if you have a diver on your boat who's diving, you really need to make sure that those zincs are on there, that you're getting reports when those zincs get down to a certain level. Quick plug, we do have a podcast. We just had the first episode launch, and by the time you guys see this, we'll have episode 2 of the podcast called the On Deck Podcast, where right now you're watching the On Deck channel. And on the On Deck Podcast, we talk to one of the largest businesses and the founder and the owner of one of the largest bottom job boat cleaning businesses in Florida. Really huge operation, really awesome guy. And the podcast is over an hour long of everything to do with cleaning your boat, with barnacles, with how to do like a quick, what I call a forensic analysis on the size of barnacles and their relation to each other to know whether or not your bottom guy has been doing a good job. I'll show that right here. That tells you something, those different sizes. And so you can assess how good a job that your people you hire out to do your bottom job are doing, or how good of a job you've been doing once you get your boat hauled out. It's a great indicator. He talks about in that podcast episode what to do if you cut yourself on a barnacle and like 1,000 other things. It was really, this guy's a wealth of information. I'll have a link down in the show notes below about the podcast, but let's get back into it and see what happened with this corroded cell drive.
So good Friday morning. We are here doing a quick update on this boat. We pulled it out the water and noticed that the sail drive had some pretty severe corrosion going on. So right now you can see Frank is adding some zincs to the sail drive. When we pulled it out, there were 0 zincs on there whatsoever. The person that was diving on the boat, cleaning it, did not report to the owner that the zincs were gone, and so the owner had no idea. And thankfully we caught it in time that the corrosion didn't really set in, but we did have to media blast the leg. And Frank has, what, how many coats of epoxy on there now, Frank?
2, about to be 3.
2 coats, about to be 3.
And had to fab this.
And the fins that protect the sail drive from large objects getting sucked up in there, because cooling water gets sucked up in here and through this entry hole here, but to cool the leg, they were completely gone. So we had Brian custom fabricate this piece of aluminum that is now glued in place to replace the fins. So we're gonna get zincs put back on here and get another couple coats of epoxy on, and then we're painting it with what, Frank?
Trilux 33.
Trilux 33, and it'll be maybe not good as new, but it'll be good to go again for a long time. So very important, guys, to make sure your diver who is cleaning the boat replaces your zincs or lets you know that the zincs need to be replaced. In the local Tampa Bay area here, we have a company named Gulf and Bay that I use to clean my boat. They are awesome because they send me a monthly report that lets me know exactly what percentage my zincs are at, so I can monitor that over time, and they do too, and they will literally just put new zincs on when they get below 50%. So make sure that whatever dive company you're using, if you're not in this area, is holding themselves accountable and reporting back to you the state of your zincs.
So I come out the next day and I go to check out the state of that cell drive and what Frank has been working on. And this is, the update, man. I mean, they saved this thing. Custom made that bracket, that intake area. He got this thing all treated and painted. Good thing it was hauled out so that could get addressed, no doubt. That saved the owner a lot of money, and it's a good warning for us.
Hey guys, quick morning update. We have a few things going on. We have the New Island packet rig up in the corner there. We still need to finish up the rig tune on that. On the caliber next to that, we currently have the whisker pole track installed going on. So we have Jeremiah up there drilling and tapping away. And there's also a lithium battery installed going on down below, along with an inverter and a really cool high output alternator. Getting a brand new roller furler today. So right now the guys are stabilizing the rig and getting ready to ease the rigging so we can slack off the stay to get it down and then build a new furler and get it put back up. The Catalina right here, we have the ongoing lithium upgrade along with also a high output alternator and inverter. And right over here we have Frank finishing up some gel coat repairs on the hardtop install on the Bento Swift Trawler. And beyond that, we just have the usual small production stuff, some standing rigging and running rigging projects going on.
That's so much stuff. I love it. Okay. So we are on to the main point of this episode where this is all about a rig inspection, but this is really important to note. This rig inspection that you're watching as part of this episode, episode 5 of the On Deck channel, is not in fact the full inspection. The full inspection took maybe about 40 minutes to do, but I do have all of that footage, and that footage is being released separately as a how-to. So here, for the purposes of this episode and kind of the narrative story about what happened this week, it's included here. You're going to get a a great overview on it, and it's just a nice light overview of what's involved in a rig inspection done here at the Yacht Rigger. And look for that how-to, because if you want to know more, it's going to be there for you. We also talk rig inspections on the On Deck podcast, which you'll be able to see that whenever that comes out as well, or hear that when that comes out as well. Over to the rig inspection. Yeah, it was a really cool boat as well, you know, walking with these guys and going to see what was going on over there. The boat is a Moody 54, and just a big old thing, man. And so it was a pre-purchase rig inspection, and that was the first thing that this potential buyer wanted to check out, because apparently, and I'm a little sketchy on the details, but so is everybody else concerning this boat, it had been demasted somewhere around like the Caribbean, and then a new mast was put on, but there's no way to know if this is just some random salvage mast off of another boat from the storm, or if it was actually spec'd out properly from Selden and shipped in and then rigged up the right way. And so if it came off of another boat, just because it fits doesn't mean it's spec'd right. And so, you know, it could screw a lot of things up if this is just like a little quick, how do you do kind of mast job. And so the potential buyer is asking Stephen, like, you know, check the rig, make sure it's good, but also, is this even the right thing? And I was surprised to hear that Stephen said, yeah, all we got to do is dig down, get to the serial number, and then he would use his contacts at Selden, and he would cross-check that against Selden's records to see if, in fact, this mast was spec'd out right from the factory and shipped in, or if they have no record of it. So they're going to definitely be doing a pretty good little investigation here. That way, the potential buyer can be an informed shopper on this boat, you know, whether or not he's going to get it. So I thought that was pretty neat. And then on to the rig inspection.
Like some guys will fill these with like Tef gel or Loctite or different sealants, and you know, some guys even melt beeswax and then get it in there. My question is always like, how did you make sure there was no moisture in the first place before you encapsulated it in the beeswax?
Right.
You know,
Yeah.
like, is your shop completely humidity free? Like, was there any moisture on the wire? So they're, you know, swear by it. And I'm like, what happens in the tropics when the wax gets hot? All right, so we're about to start the rigging inspection here on this Moody 45. The very first thing we do, just when we're walking up to the boat, is get a general look over, make sure nothing looks crazy, funky on the rig, and it looks secure. And then we're gonna start at deck level and move our way around and check all the bottom pins, bottom connections, make sure everything looks decent, and then start looking for a halyard to go up on. I've actually already identified that. The masthead halyard right here. In a second, we're gonna check it out too, just visually, to make sure there's no bad chafe points on it, just because you wanna obviously make sure that what you're going up on is solid, and it's a high quality line that doesn't look, it looks like it's in good shape. I will go up the rig. Most likely I'll go all the way to the top and then work my way down. What we want to do is make sure this is secure. And with this particular mast, we are keel stepped, so that's an extra point of security. We're cutter rigged, so there's 2 forward stays, so the mast can't fall over backwards. We have multiple shrouds off to each side. Really solid backstay. The spreaders are swept back, so the mast really is very, very solid. We're not too worried about this one just randomly falling down on us. Simple lesson is to always, as often as possible, give all your rigging and deck hardware a quick freshwater rinse whenever you're done with the trip or whenever you're giving the boat a wash down, just because salt is corrosive. These are definitely a little dry. These are awesome units, but these stainless steel bearings in this race should be greased. Selden has a specially formulated grease for it, but these are bone dry. You can actually hear the rattling kind of sound. The lower unit sounds a lot better. Really nice and smooth, no metal on metal sounds, but there's definitely metal on metal going on up on the swivel. Sounding good. We got a really rusted first link of chain here. It's interesting. I wonder if it's galvanic, because we have a stainless shackle from a stainless anchor to a galvanized chain, the similar metal action going on there. But this is a relatively easy fix in that you could just cut off the bad links and you're only losing a few, and then reattach and have good chain, as long as there's not other bad spots in there. It's kind of hard to inspect, but there's a bunch of bolts down here, and always good to look for cracks. Make sure nothing's about to fail there, but that looks pretty good. Whew.
Boat yoga.
Yeah. Of course, if the boat's bound to a dock, you can just like walk up to it and let me take a look. But in this case, we gotta climb over there a little bit.
Yep.
I like to look and see if the mast is tuned at least close to correctly before we go up, just to give you an idea of what to look for once I'm up there in the mainsail. Now, I'm just checking to see that it's in column.
It looks to me as if either, and we'll have to measure the turnbuckles, but there's a little bit of a offset to starboard, either at the masthead or the lowers and the D2, so the first sets of diagonals are slightly over tightened on port, so pulling the middle of the mast over the port. A huge safety issue here, just to keep in mind, is the condition of the halyard that you're going up on. It's the number one highest risk part of this process, is making sure you're on a really good solid piece of running rigging.
And you're just doing a regular bowline there?
And here, correct. I'm tying a bowline really nice and short, keeping the loop of the bowline super short, because when I get up to the top of the mast and this stops in the shiv box, I don't want to be stuck trying to force my way up to the masthead, and I don't trust the splice or the shackle, just because I don't know who did it, don't know how much it's been loaded.
So you never go up on a shackle?
Never go up on the shackle, correct. So I do kind of look around on my way up and just start looking for glaringly obvious issues, glancing at cotter pins. I'm going to look at this all much more closely on my way down. Keep your feet on the rig. Keep yourself back a little. You're much less likely to get your legs jammed under these shrouds, for instance. If you have your knees way up against the rig, they would, like a V-jammer in there, and just completely get stuck and not feel very good. Everyone's starting to look a little smaller down there. Pretty view up here today. It's so beautiful in St. Pete this time of year. 6 feet. Getting closer. I'm going to start telling him how close I am. So I'm using my fist as a signal, as well as yelling, just so that in case he's not looking. Now we're going to take a real close look around here. Look at all the standing rigging components first. So again, I'm looking to make sure we have cotter pins in place and that they're bent. Wind instrument wiring looks pretty good. No severe pinches there. This is a halyard restrainer. I actually wrote a whole blog post about these. We can post a link, but it basically creates deflection in the halyard. First of all, this Genoa is way too short. It should be up considerably higher, but what this is doing is it's stopping the halyard from being able to wrap around the roller furler foils. So it's good that it's there, but the sail length is not right. Better look on this side of the mast. Whew, there's some corroded rivets. I'll take a picture of that in a second. It's aluminum rivets on a stainless plate. Definitely not very happy with their situation in life. Okay, all right. So we look like we had a pretty severe halyard wrap here at some point. So that restrainer there maybe didn't do its thing, or that spinnaker halyard wrapped around here. So when the furler was turning, it grabbed the halyard and wrapped it really hard around here, and somebody only figured out when things got hard to furl. So we're going to have to be replacing this upper foil section, or possibly just cutting it off a little shorter, but definitely need to address that. Light housing looks good. Something else I always look at for severe oxidation. Anchor lights on. But yeah, it lets me get up and see how my feet and knee are positioned here. It just lets me see everything. And it's surprisingly comfortable. I can hold this for a little while. But man, it really is a beautiful day up here. And this one here feels good. Build up on there, no signs of cracks. And interestingly, the cracks in swages are almost always vertical. They run the same direction as the swage. They don't run across it like this. They're almost always vertical, up and down. Again, keeping my feet on the rig. Hold that. I always give these spreaders a good shake to look for play on these two pins, just to make sure that nothing's wearing out here. All feels good. Take a nice close look at the spreader tips. Something of note to look at, and everything's been fine on this so far, I'm just looking at it without telling you, is the top of toggles like this. This is called a double jaw toggle, sometimes referred to as like a strap toggle, because it was once a flat piece of metal that was bent into that shape. You want to look at the upper radius, this point right here. Just look for any heavy corrosion. Sometimes they can crack right there. I've seen them cracked completely through. Got some of the guys from Island Packet down there doing some service work. Awesome company. If you're in the market for an amazing monohull, chat to those guys at Island Packet. That is the one, I think, one ever built Island Packet 525. All right, so we have a working steaming light. Deck light doesn't have a bulb. There's a really cool LED fixture for this type of can fitting. They originally were halogens, but we have LEDs for those now. I'll put a link in the description for those too. They're really cool. Again, looking really closely at all the swages for any significant signs of corrosion, potential for cracks. This here is interesting, this rub spot. Looks like one of the batten cars at some point may have failed and rubbed on the mast. Really, all it's done is chewed up the paint. You can see it's all the way through. The yellowy green stuff is primer, but there's no structural damage. Maybe a little bit of a rough spot. Could clean it up with a file at some point, depending on the type of cars involved here, but nothing critical. Looks ugly, but nothing critical. All right, we're good. Ready down. Up underneath here is going to be attached to the chain plate, and I'm not exactly how sure Moody did it, but then down below here is going to be attached.
Like glass into a stringer?
Very likely. Yeah. You didn't paint that?
No. Oh, I see.
Oh, there we go. Okay.
I got like a neat.
Now we get a really good idea.
Yeah, that's great.
Okay. So the main thing of concern that I'd be looking for here is really heavy corrosion. These almost always have some amount of rust on them. Like you can see here, a little bit bleeding out. They're grounded, so that's good. But yeah, so we're just making sure that, you know, cotter pins were bent and put in place. So I've seen one time the pin had walked halfway out on the boat and nothing terrible happened, but the pin was literally halfway out on like a 25-year-old boat. It's slowly been inching its way out. But you can see how burly this is. I mean, this is glassed into your superstructure here. And then these giant, oh yeah, this is fantastically well built. Yeah, it is.
Can you see good?
Oh, yeah.
Beastly.
Yeah, that's fantastic. It's got like a giant knee attached to the stringer there.
Yep, yep. So really good. Happy with that. So that was pretty good. No major issues. The big question here is if that mast was spec'd originally or spec'd specifically for that boat, because it was replaced in the islands, and we couldn't access the mast base to access the serial number. So we're going to run that by Selden Mast and see if they can't give us any specifics on it. Beyond that though, it did look pretty normal. Everything looked good in terms of the dimensions of the rig and the section size. Rigging checked out fine. One issue you'll see in the video where the headstay has suffered some damage, or the headstay foils have suffered some damage from a halyard wrap. Classic case of it. Thankfully the forestay itself is undamaged. Beyond that though, everything looks good.
So that is it for this episode, episode 5 of the On Deck channel. I'm Sailor Smurf. Thank you so much for watching. Please like, comment, subscribe. You'll also see in the show notes below that you'll find all of the different tools and things that the yacht rigger finds useful. And those are just links. They're not sponsors, but if you do hit those links and make a purchase, we get a few pennies back to us, and that keeps this content flowing to you and doesn't cost you anything. Thank you for your support, and thank you for watching this episode of the On Deck channel. Sailor Smurf out.